service the area may do. Okay. Any other company that wishes to service the area needs to have a similar agreement. So, and if they don't, the agreement says then Altice has the right to lower their agreement. So that's basically, I don't have the numbers as to how much the franchise fees are that we get. I believe we get it quarterly. It's based on the previous year's gross receipts from Altice.
Okay.
That
So
sounds- Technology, the technology credit could help us with Wi-Fi in the back. It's almost
yeah, I don't know when it comes in, and I don't remember. I read it through, but I don't remember if there are any connections or if it's just a straight, here's $3,500.
Mhm.
But they've also given, they've increased the Wi-Fi service in the office from, I don't remember the numbers, up to I think 1,000. And I'm not good with remembering those numbers, but they recently did give us an increase in power in the office outside of this agreement, just because we had asked them for it.
separate
That's
from the discussion we had
separate from the
recently.
Agreement. It was just we needed to update our service.
I mean,
And that was for us and for the police.
Separate from the discussion we were having recently about the boosters for the back.
Oh yes, yeah,
Yeah.
that's separate. Yeah, this was just the Wi-Fi power, I believe,
Cool.
or something like that.
Thank you for
Fran,
taking time.
so Fran, how much time do you think will be needed for the public hearing?
We're going to post the agreement. The agreement is about 35 pages. It's a lot of, nothing has been changed, but it will be posted. It depends on how much public interest we have. We may need an hour. We may have a couple of people commenting and then leave it open till the end of a meeting. I don't think we're going to have a lot of attention, but I'm sure we'll have some. And I think it's good that people get to read the agreement so that they know, because a lot of people are under the impression that, we've locked FiOS, for example, out of the village, and we haven't done that. Anybody can come in. I think FiOS has their own reasons for not coming this way, and it's got nothing to do with us. But
Right.
I think the one night public hearing would be fine.
Okay.
Are
And
there
starting
any
at
other
6:30?
I guess it's
Sorry?
an agreement, but I was just curious if there are any other public benefits to this franchise besides the library and our own offices.
And the school, the library, the school, all of our offices. It would be any schools that are in our district, which we only have the one. Any libraries that are in our district. It would be, I believe, like the ambulance corps is not within the village, so that's how it might be. So it would be any of those things, but basically that's the way it reads.
What about the firehouse or any other? Yeah,
I believe, they're all part of the municipal buildings. Yeah.
gotcha.
So Fran, is 6:30 a
I
good?
think 6:30 would be fine, yes.
Okay. Very good. Okay, that takes us through the 3 business items, and that brings us to code update. Chapter 134 is actually multiple pieces, as you're aware. Chapter 134, the map, and I also provided a list of all the properties that would change zoning districts if the map were approved. So with that, can we go to chapter 134?
Sure, I just need to get it open.
Marie, I saw the list of properties that have changed are also on post phase 5, right?
They should be on the Google Drive.
And what is the title of the document?
I'm looking for it. I know it's here.
See the zoning table.
That's also part of chapter 134 that we'll have to discuss.
It's tax law changes 11/27/20. It's an Excel spreadsheet.
Are we looking at that first?
No,
Yes, it's in conjunction, right, Mary?
it's in conjunction. Let's go through any remaining comments in 134, and then we can go to the map and or the dimensions table and or the tax law changes. So the first one that I,
So the first,
go ahead, Fran.
go ahead, Marie, you got it.
No, you drive us.
First comment I see is the definition of bed and breakfast, and it is on page 5. It says bed and breakfasts are currently permitted in R1, R3, and B1 with a special use permit. This version of the code allows them in R3 only and without a special use permit. Is this what we want? And then the second comment on that from April was add a special use permit.
Okay. I did not make that change. So if you would leave that in there, I will make that change.
Okay, so that was the districts, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So what that would be is R3 only and a special use permit.
Right. So we're not going to do bed and breakfast in B1.
No bed, no,
Right.
no bed and breakfast in B1, correct.
On page 19, site plan review and approval. It is regarding, let me see here, R1 district. We're just deleting some words. So
Yes.
site plan.
Yeah, Fran,
site plan review.
you did a copy of this, a copy and paste last week, last time. And what it was in the past, it was both, it was for both a site plan, the condition into which you fall this, into which this falls is R1, let's see, site plan review and approval. What it had said was that the proposed building would go to the planning board for its review. And then it was added that in a case where a change of use is requested, it would also go to the planning board. So you had two, essentially the same wording, but one was for a building approval and the other was for change of use. Unfortunately, the words continued to contain both.
Okay.
So I removed or use from the first, and I reviewed building from the second.
Okay, so in this case, we removed, so it now reads, in each case where a building is proposed in this district, the site plan shall be submitted to the code enforcement officer, who shall refer the site plan of the proposed building to the planning board for its review. Fine. And in the second case, in the case where there's a change of use, other than a one-family home occupancy and short-term rentals is proposed, a site plan shall be submitted to the code enforcement officer, who shall refer the site plan of the proposed use to the planning board. So it's not okay. So it was just two. That's right. We divided this up to make it easier.
Right.
Instead of having it. Got it. Okay.
I see the next one on page 72, Fran.
Whoops. Okay. Right. That's about where I. Okay. And on page 72, we're talking about. Oh, we remember this one. Payment of fees in lieu of parking.
Yep.
So where did we end up with this? Oh, we didn't.
We did not reach resolution on it.
Okay. And I know Kathleen, you had sent us some other things from other municipalities.
I did some reading. I think it's misapplied as we're using it here in the village. It's a mechanism. I think the intent when it was originally put in place was good and right, to try to build a fund that would offset costs for public parking or potential public parking spaces, but we haven't been segregating the money separately or accruing a fund for that purpose. Normally it's used in cities and suburban areas that have other locations where developers can, normally it's used in new construction in cities and larger cities where developers actually have an opportunity to create real spaces, actual spaces off-site to reduce impacts. And there are, in those cases, the fees that are charged actually relate to the building and development of an actual parking space. So depending on the municipality, it might be $10,000, it might be $24,000. We're collecting a paltry amount of money that we're not segregating toward a use. I can understand the logic behind a business fee or a business permit fee, but asking people to pay for parking spaces that don't exist doesn't seem logical to me. It seems like it's a real struggle when the planning board needs to explain it to folks over and over again why this fee is being charged, and they're not actually buying parking. It seems like we could reduce that by shifting away from this model that isn't working toward a different fee. If we in fact need the fees.
Or,
I would argue that it is not working.
right.
It is working. The planning board, I've never heard any complaint from the planning board that it is difficult to describe. So I would not use those as arguments for or against.
Oh, that was reported to me by the planning board chair himself. That it is difficulty in explaining how is it working? If it is working, how is it working? Are we offsetting? Are we somehow creating a fund to build other parking? Are we putting it toward municipal lot? We don't even know how much we're bringing in, right? Because we're not segregating. I mean, we know how much at the time, but we're not tracking it, right?
So my response to that is, if you've looked at any properties that have sold recently and the price of those properties, it would probably take 50 years to get enough money to buy one of those properties. So, I mean,
what we did,
go ahead, Fran.
we recently paid $10,000 for a parking meter in Fair Street. While this fee was not segregated, it went into the general fund, and out of the general fund came $10,000 to pay for a parking meter. I doubt very much that we have $10,000 worth of payment in lieu of parking, but that's a use that it can be used for. Now we're going to contract with additional parking, services as we go through with the parking committee. So, while it is going to the general fund, it isn't segregated. I think that we could very easily say that it's helping us towards adding additional parking controls in the village, if nothing else. I mean, it's obviously not creating new parking spaces. And so in that way, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it is, a fund that we're using to pay for parking meters, pay for contracts with additional companies and so on and so forth.
That's a good point, that it offsets those costs. In usual applications, it's a fee that's applied in new construction to a developer. Here we are applying it to business owners.
Correct.
Right,
This
business.
only applies to the B1 zoning district, and it only applies to businesses in the B1 zoning district. If there is a residence in the B1 zoning district, they do not get this.
Okay, I think it's misapplied in this context, and I think it's cumbersome for the public to understand buying spaces that don't exist. But if the majority of the board believes that that's the appropriate way to handle it, so be it.
Okay, so let's have a vote on this.
I'm sorry, can I just ask a question on this, just for clarification for my own mind? So a business owner goes into, say, I don't know, the former Berkelman space, that new business has to pay for this fee, or it's the original owner of the building had to pay when they bought the building?
It does not apply to the building, it applies to the
It
business in
is
the building.
paid,
Okay,
But it's
so,
paid by the business,
okay,
and it is not transferred. If you,
and it depends on what,
okay,
it depends on what type of a business it is. So for example, if it's a restaurant,
Mhm.
there's a certain fee per number of tables, number of seats. If it's a beauty shop, it would be something like that. I don't believe, and I don't remember correctly, Marie, if like a small shop pays this. They don't really, I know the restaurants do, the hotel in town does.
businesses
I-
have a certain number of spaces that are grandfathered. So if you're going from retail to retail, typically no additional fees in lieu are applied. If you're going from retail to restaurant, there are definitely fees in lieu that will be applied.
Mhm.
And if you go from so for example, when the Silver Spoon went to the Cold Spring Hotel, there were a certain number of spaces that were grandfathered, and then the number of rooms in the hotel, based upon the parking table, identified the number of spaces that are required for that type of business and the configuration of the business, how many rooms were they renting, minus the grandfathered spaces. And that then was the result was the number of fees in lieu for the hotel.
It's 250 a space, is that right?
It is.
Yeah. So I guess the question is, if our goal is to be, is the amount, does the amount seem appropriate given the value of parking spaces or lack thereof, the value of, if this business were to provide an actual space, the value is higher than 250. Is the amount we're collecting, given the impact of traffic on Main Street by businesses, is the amount we're collecting meaningful in any way?
Well, certainly any fee is more meaningful than none.
True,
I'm being a little sarcastic. I'm not being sarcastic to you. I'm just saying
in general.
a fee is more meaningful than no fee.
It just
But
seems to me that it's not in terms of, if the goal is building funds toward meaningful offset of parking congestion on Main Street, it doesn't actually get us any farther. And if it doesn't get us any farther, and it's not, and the logic behind it, in my view, is flawed, then why collect it? It's, I mean, just to call it part of a business fee, as opposed to a payment in lieu of parking. It's not offsetting anything.
well, there is
the
there is a business fee.
Right. So why not simplify the code and say, if the $250 is meaningful, combine it into a single business fee, rather than making two separate processes for a business owner to go through. And
I mean, how much would you put in for an additional business fee?
I mean, if the amount you're charging now is 250, collapse the 250 into the.
It's 250 per space. And in some instances, for example, a hotel, I believe it was one space per room, and Jimmy has like 7 or 8 rooms.
Right, we need 5 spaces.
Right. If we reword this to say, this funding will be used to offset the parking apps that we use, or something to that effect.
I mean, that at least draws, and if you frame it that way, Fran, it draws a direct connection between what the fee is being collected for and what the final outcome is. And that to me makes more sense for a person, a lay person trying to understand the purpose of the fee and the purpose in the code.
I thought that
that's always the goal I have in mind, is thinking about a person, a regular person who's not us and doesn't look at code all the time, understanding the why.
I thought the proposal on the table was to delete this.
It was, the proposal was to delete it. So are we deleting it or are we changing it?
Yeah, that's the question.
Okay, because the original quote was, do we want to eliminate it or change it to something else?
So how do you want to go?
So
I'm,
deleting it, you would get rid of the fee.
No, we would get rid of the statement in the code and eliminate the fee. There are two things that need to be done.
Okay, I'm making sure that I understand what you're saying.
so is this fee listed in the master fee schedule, Marie?
It is.
It is.
It is.
Mhm.
Okay. So the proposal, so the question to you is delete it or change it? Uh,
I
So,
think Fran's proposal to change is a meaningful compromise, is a good compromise, right? Between the
What's
two
the-
positions. Sure, her proposal was to change the wording more specifically to state.
let
that
me ask
offset.
Fran what her proposal was.
She can certainly state.
Okay, I'm typing out. Basically, I was just going to add a line that says fees collected in lieu of parking will be used by the village to offset expenses that the village incurs for controlling parking. How's that?
For municipal parking.
Controlling, you could even
Offset
use it to
cost
pay
related.
for, you could use it to pay for Nico, who
Sure.
controls parking. Okay, fees collected.
So, but so the fee that was collected was based upon the parking table. So there was a fee for every parking space that was required based upon the parking table.
It still can be, can it not? It's just making
I'm
clear
just-
what the fee is collected for.
So the same question arises, if the fee in lieu makes no sense relative to how it's going to be used, then changing how it's going to be used, it seems to me, doesn't really help.
Well, it takes away the mystery of where the money goes and what's it's for.
So it used to say the money went to the parking fund or something like that.
But
And we deleted that.
because it
so-
wasn't going into a parking fund, it was dumping into
Correct.
the general fund.
Correct. I agree. That's what it
Okay,
said.
so I just put its sentence in. I don't know if you can see it. I don't know if that helps.
I think it does.
I can't see it yet, Fran.
I'm sorry, it's right under the last part of it. It says, fees collected in lieu of parking are used by the village to offset expenses related to parking control. Does that help?
I think it does. Makes it more clear.
You didn't get it yet, Murray?
I'm C is part of A and B. So I can't just look at C and say,
Okay, sorry.
C makes sense. 7, this is all in 7.
Right. Mhm. Accept the payment of fee or PRN and substitution for providing someone. Okay, so yeah, we have to really go back.
Yeah, you need to, A needs to be changed.
Mhm.
B could potentially stay in based upon what A is changed to. And then C.
And then D, for some reason, has to get out of there. For properties located in B1 zoning distance upon request of the property.
Yes, D
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah,
apply to 7. Okay, so I think that what I would do, I'm gonna have to go back and reread this, but also can you mark D, Fran, that needs to be moved? That was-
Yeah, I'm looking at this whole thing because that is all, okay. This is
Dangle.
another chapter. This chapter got messed up. This chapter got messed up because it's,
This is 134.18 or 134.19?
I think things got intermixed.
7 goes with the parking table. I believe 7 goes with the parking table.
is on page
Right,
16.
D is, this must be 134.18 or 19.
D belongs to something else. I don't want to take it out because it doesn't belong. I'm gonna have to
No, no, no.
relook at it
Yeah,
and,
Belongs,
Alright.
it looks like it's in 17 currently.
but I they believe it belongs above.
yes, this is all districts. D applies to all districts.
Got it.
All right, let me
Okay.
highlight this and I need to go back.
Okay,
So D, I'm not gonna pull D out yet.
no, no. Okay, so we have to come back to that.
All right, we can, I believe that the payment in lieu of should end after C.
I agree.
Yeah.
But let's not fix it now. We'll have to come back to it.
Okay. But do we, all right, we're gonna have to take a look at it once more.
Yes,
But I think that
All right, I'm leaving myself a note.
I think that Fran's language is good, though. The
Agreed.
addition of the sentence.
Okay, yeah, we're just gonna have to adjust what's above it, like A, so that it corresponds.
okay, so the next one is on page 78. 77 going on to page 78.
All right. So we're talking, oh, this is the, okay. Powers and duties, ZBA,
Yeah, interpretation.
all the powers and duties prescribed by law under section interpretation upon appeal from a decision by an administrative official to decide any question involving the interpretation of any provision of this chapter, chapter 42 or chapter 114. Okay, so the question was, does the ZBA have the authority to interpret chapters 42 and 114?
I'm sorry, what, I must be looking at the wrong thing. What page are you on?
Page 78, it's 134.24, powers and duties.
Okay,
And the question, I think, is whether the interpretation should be extended to the ZBA for chapter 42 fences and 114 pools. And I don't know why you would not want the ZBA to be able to interpret those elements. So
I
New York,
agree.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
friend, it should say swimming pools, comma, no, not swimming. You have to take the right paren out.
Gotcha, okay.
So it's swimming pools,
Spas.
comma, spas, and hot tubs.
I thought you said hot dogs.
Hot dogs works too.
And
It
Fran,
always works.
you need a space between swimming and pools.
Okay.
I was reading everything. I just didn't understand why swimming was something that was going to be just generally swimming.
This has been done and redone and hashed and rehashed so many times. I agree, fences used to be in this chapter, is that correct?
That is correct.
And we pulled fences out to a separate chapter. So I don't see why ZBA can't have interpretation over the fences chapter. That to me seems fine. I don't, was swimming pools in this chapter, or was that always separate? And has
Always
ZBA had authority?
Always separate.
Has ZBA had authority over that before?
This was not something that was identified in this chapter previously.
So New York State consolidated laws for villages. The powers to interpret go hand in hand with the power to grant variances. It's all a single sentence. Orders, requirements, decisions, interpretations, determinations. The Board of Appeals may reverse or affirm wholly or partly, or may modify the order, requirement, decision, interpretation, or determination appealed from, and shall make such order, requirement, decision, interpretation, or determination as in its opinion ought to have been made in the matter by the administrative official charged with the enforcement of such local law, and to that end shall have all the powers of the administrative official for whose order, requirement, decision, interpretation, or determination the appeal is taken. That's sort of how.
Could you go back to the third sentence this after the comma?
Are you asking me or Fran?
You're the one who's reading something.
Okay,
I'm
well,
joking.
I'm not sure which
I'm
you mean.
joking, Kathleen. You lost me in what you were reading.
So it's
Five
Maria, it's in
sentences
the
ago.
comments. You can read it yourself. It's in the comments there. I was reading it out for the benefit of whoever watches this film and doesn't have access because we're not screen sharing. So the interpretate under village, New York State consolidated laws for villages, the power to interpret and vary go together as a whole. I'm not understanding why you would not continue interpretation and variance as part and parcel of these chapters. I feel like we're going in circles with this one. It seems fairly straightforward in zoning codes that interpretation lays out what comes next in terms of variance. You have to give them the power to interpret so they can determine what needs to be decided in the variance. And I don't, if it's in a single paragraph in the New York State consolidated laws for villages, I don't know why we would choose to be different at the local level.
Whatever you want, Kathleen. However, in looking at the second sentence, it doesn't make sense. Not what you're saying. What is written here doesn't make sense.
What is written where? In which portion? That's a direct quote from the New York's, from the.
I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about the code. A, interpretation. The second sentence doesn't make sense.
Okay.
So there needs to be some manner of change to that. And maybe it's just after an enjoyment of the land or building involved, period, pools, spas, and hot tubs, comma, including determination of the exact location of any district boundary if there is uncertainty with respect thereto.
And where are you reading from?
In A.
A. So have the letter A.
Second sentence does not make sense.
To vary or adapt the strict application of any of the requirements of Chapter 42 in case of lots of members of which are subject to high degree of.
Particularly in the area of enjoyment of the land or building involved, period, pools, comma, spas, and hot tubs, right parentheses, comma, including determination of the exact location of any district boundary if there is uncertainty with respect thereto.
Something's all messed up here.
Yes, so we've got to come back to this, at least in terms of the second sentence.
I need to read it again without someone else reading out loud. Sorry.
There's missing.
Missing stuff, and it's throwing other stuff in that is not appropriate. Second sentence is only talking about Chapter 42.
Okay, I'm reading. I'm sorry. Give me a second.
Yes. Kathleen, the second sentence is only talking about Chapter 42. And at the end, it talks about the exact location of any district boundary. That has nothing to do with Chapter 42.
So is it possible that that is connected from elsewhere? Can you
screwed up?
Yeah.
A is screwed up.
I see it now.
Okay.
I see it now.
Okay, so we need to come back.
This part really basically needs to come out.
So it needs
I
don't know that it does,
Okay.
Fran.
Okay.
I'd have to go back to 134 and
I mean, it seems as if you could stop right after the closed paren.
No,
Which closed paren?
no, because it says building involved period, schools,
No.
spas and hot tubs. You can't stop after the paren.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
So we need to review
All
that.
right, so this whole chapter needs a reread.
Yeah.
Can we
Because
just
if we move
deal with it
around-
now, or do we need to come back
No,
again?
but let's go.
We need to go back to the original one to see what originally, or,
Okay.
you have to go back to all the versions one by one to see where this was added and what was added incorrectly. So, it takes a going back version by version to see which changes were made and where we messed up.
Yeah.
It looks
Okay.
like it looks like just some additional text came with.
Yeah, but it may belong someplace else. That's the issue.
Understood.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so we need some corrections on that.
Yeah.
Now I know what I'm gonna do all weekend. How exciting. Okay, on page 79.
Sorry, Fran, so 4, right paren, 4, left paren, multiple periods after hot tubs. It's right above
I
134.
got you. Okay, got it.
So 3, above that, 3 looks like what was in a second sentence that we were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
somehow 3, it looks like 3 got planted into A, but
All right, let me go up.
we've got to go back and look at
Yeah.
it.
Gotta go back and take a look.
Yeah.
All right. Is that B3, Marie?
Is it,
Is
Fran,
it B3?
I scrolled past it. I've got to go back and find it.
Yes, it is. It's fine. I got it.
Great. Thank you.
B3. Okay. So I'm just putting a note for myself.
Great.
That takes care of that. Okay, we are down to now this 3, which was added back in February. Okay, that
What page, Fran?
this is the 3 that we were just talking about. So we're on page 79. I'm just going to put a note.
Okay.
Okay. So that needs to just be sort of re-straightened out.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I just replaced a dash. That was easy. The zoning map. Is this the current zoning map, Marie? This
That
not
is
the new one,
that
right?
is the current zoning map, and what we need to do is look at the zoning map that is on the Google Drive. And
Right.
that map is Cold Spring zoning 2021 5/6/21.
2021. There it is. Okay. It's a PDF, right?
Yes.
This is the new one.
I see.
Okay.
I see it. Okay.
Okay, so are we using this in conjunction with the list, the tax lot
Yes.
list?
Yes.
Okay, so now the game is, how do we look at 2 things at the same time?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have
I haven't ever
the
printed.
2020, we have the map.
Yep.
And we have a tax lot list.
Yep.
Tax lot zoning changes 11/27/20.
Yep.
Which are the ones that were proposed by the code update committee. Is this correct? Marie?
Correct. So
So
for many of them, if you look at the beige coloring, that is now MU1. If you look at the map on the bottom, toward the left, you have a whole bunch of beige. Those are all of the Marathon properties. You'll see that there are 2 roads that go through the Marathon properties. Those are actually identified by Putnam County as roads. They have not been built, but those are roads. And then the other portion of MU1, if you go to the top of the map alongside the railroad tracks to the east, you'll see a bunch of beige, 3 single properties, and those would be the studio on Fair Street, Janet Rust's property on Fair Street, and Riverview on Fair Street, and almost all of the rest is village owned. So that's one change, and that covers, I'm going to say, 60 to 70% of the changes in the document, the spreadsheet.
These were all, I'm sorry, Marie,
Those-
these were all previously I1s?
Let me just look, Fran. Yes. Oh, those were all previously I1. Those were not all of the I1s, but those were the primary I1s.
The ones that are listed underwater lands that belong to Putnam County,
Correct.
where
That is
are they?
correct. In the just north of Mayor's Park.
Oh, okay, but there's houses there, right? Is that
No,
after the houses? or-
Sorry, before the houses, there are some water. The houses north of Mayor's Park are not in the village.
Right, I thought so, yeah,
Right.
okay.
Those are in Phillipstown, but there
Phillipstown.
is underwater land owned by Putnam County between the village, the village's property and those houses. Additional I1 properties.
So
Yeah.
Marie, is that sorry to interrupt. Is that are we talking about that's the swampy area that
No,
the tidal pool?
that's further north.
I can't picture where you mean.
It's just like, you
not
can't tell it's underwater from the street. You can't tell from Fair Street. It's just
So
past the fence.
What is between it and Fair Street?
It's on Fair Street.
It's on Fair Street.
It's towards the river. If you're driving Fair Street north, it's on the left-hand side. You have Mayor's Park, and then past the
Right.
fence, it's that area.
Yeah,
That
it is-
property.
So
It is
outside
not-
the boundaries of the park.
beyond the boundary of the
Got it.
park.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Now, other I1 that is not going to MU1 are, let's see here, I1. Scenic Hudson's property, which is now shown in green at the south end of the village, going from the railroad tracks to the village limits. That is currently zoned I1 and I2. That will now go to PR1, represented in green.
Is that the Foundry Preserve, Marie?
Yes,
where
it's actually, yes, Fran, it's the Foundry Preserve and some additional, it's the Foundry Preserve, yes.
Okay.
In addition, there is property on Chestnut Street, the Chestnut Street that is not coincident with Route 9D, that is currently zoned I1, that is going to totally R1. And let me further explain that Scenic Hudson property is currently zoned I1 and I2 without delineation of what is I1 and what is I2. That green area that I highlighted in the lower portion of the village, that I1 and I2 went into the houses that are alongside Chestnut Street.
Okay.
And so this is clearing up or eliminating that problem. So there's at least one private home, which is currently shown on the current map as R1, I1, and I2. That will become all R1.
So
The
59 Chestnut and 63 Chestnut.
Well, 63 Chestnut is different. 59 Chestnut is a private home.
Mhm.
63 Chestnut is the Putnam History Museum. That is currently zoned R1, I1, and R2 and I2. The recommendation here is to make it PR1, Parks and Recreation.
Got it.
And now, looking at Rock Street, there
Marie,
are,
can I back you up for a second, Marie?
sure,
I'm looking at the list. I only see one property on Chestnut that is going to R1, but the map shows 3. Or is that all one piece of property?
The map shows,
2.
should
The
show
map
more
shows
than,
2.
the map shows 1, 2, 3, 4. There are actually 3 parcels and an unidentified parcel in between them.
So is that all Curdo's property?
No, not all Curdo's property. Curdo's property is at 59, which is at the beginning of the Chestnut Street extension.
Right.
Mhm.
That's Joe Curdo's property.
Right.
These are beyond it. These
But
are
on,
to
on
the,
the,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, on the list, the tax lot zoning change list, I see
Yeah.
three Chestnut Street addresses. One goes to R1, which is Curdo,
Mhm.
and Museum and Scenic Hudson all go to PR1. So what is the other R1, unless I'm missing something?
You'll see two.
Oh, I see it. It's way down the bottom.
You'll see 2 R1 parcels, and then another parcel which is not marked but is in white, just north of that. That's the Curdo property.
Mm-hmm.
And then the way the map is currently shown, not this one, but the old one, 63 Chestnut and 79 Chestnut, or 63 Chestnut was a combination of R1, I1, and I2, and 79 Chestnut was I1 and I2. Both of those are being rezoned to PR1.
Okay. And 25 Chestnut, which is another one that went from B1 to R1.
25 Chestnut.
I'm not sure where that would be. On the list, it says B1 to R1.
20, are you sure it was Chestnut?
So it's
It's down the bottom of the list. It says Hendricks.
Oh, Hendricks is currently B2. So if you look at Wall Street, at the intersection with Chestnut Street,
Okay.
that whole area was zoned B2. It was the shopping mall. I forget what the name of B2 was. But the Hendricks property is an R1. Sorry, the Hendricks property is a single family home, and it made
Right.
more sense to reclassify it as R1 and not to leave it as B2.
Got it. Okay. Thank
Fran,
you.
I think I understand. I think I'm confused in the same way Fran is. That there's on the map 2 R1 parcels on the sort of the Chestnut extension, Curdo, that odd little slice between, and then a second parcel. And what that second, I only see one in that section of Chestnut Street that becomes R1. So the question is, what is the second R1?
What is the second parcel?
Okay, so beyond the Putnam History Museum, which is the green between Curdo, so Curdo is at 59, then there's 61, which is Pete, and then 63, which is the Putnam History Museum, and then I believe the next one, what's his name? There's another Downey in there. It's just, I think it's Marilyn Downey. They were incorrectly coded as I1.
I think that 61 is not shown on the tax list.
On the Excel spreadsheet.
Because it doesn't need to be changed.
Oh, okay. So it's been R1.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That makes sense.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
What's the story with that little slice between the 2 R1s?
That
tiny lot.
Putnam County can't determine what it is. It looks like it was probably an access road at one point, but it is not where the Hall Road is. The Hall Road is further to the east.
Yeah.
But Putnam County, we have discussed this. They asked whether or not I wanted them to further investigate. I said no.
So
just
can we
leave
put
it.
a little asterisk?
There is no tax lot number associated with that property.
Got it.
Up for grabs. I think
Money left on the table. Money left on the table.
I think we should plant over there. Flowers.
So the other I1 properties that are being moved are on Rock Street. Rock Street has what I believe happened many years ago is when the zoning map was drawn, a straight line was drawn northward from the east and west boundaries of the Marathon property, encompassing a portion of Forge Gate, encompassing all of the Percacholo lands, and a number of properties on Rock Street. So what this map illustrates is that all of the properties on Rock Street, from the southern portion of Rock Street heading to the west, are now rezoned as R1 with two exceptions. And that those are 7 Rock, which now becomes, which had been zoned, portion of it R3 and a portion of it I1. And the other portion that you see there on Rock Street has always been zoned R3, and that's 3 Rock. So it's 3 Rock and 7 Rock remain R3. All of the other parcels on that side of Rock Street now become R1, and the parcels on Kemble that abut Rock all now become R1.
Makes sense.
And I assume that the little brown strips that are coming out from Main to Rock, that is the back of the buildings that are on Main Street?
Those
Come
are
through the parking?
those are properties that go, the tax lots go from Main to Rock.
Got you. Mhm.
So they're all one
Mhm.
parcel.
So we've done away with the I1 district, basically.
And I2, all gone.
There weren't many I2s, just these odd things that were multiple district numbers, right?
Yes, you're correct, Frank. The
Yeah.
I2 had no individual property identified just as I2. The properties were identified as I-1 ampersand I-2.
Right. And so the West Street property is the 1 which belongs to the village and the 3 which belongs to Impellitteri, going from what was called a recreation district to now a R1 and the PR1.
So Dockside, which is currently identified R1, is going to PR1. The Impel property was identified as, so the next lot south of that is Laura Bergman's, and she was always identified as R1, just as Dockside was identified as R1. And the Impel property was identified as recreation. That is now going to R1.
So Laura Bergman's is going to stay,
Stay
is she going to be a
R1.
B1 or a PR1?
She's going to stay R1.
Oh, I see it. Okay. Yeah. I was looking up at Fish Street. And everything, most of the rest of the property down there is all B or PR, and that's it.
Right. B1
See.
for all of the structures and PR1 for all of the waterfront and the boat club. Also along that line, you'll see the chapel restoration. If you move south along south along Market Street,
Right.
you'll see the chapel restoration is PR1 and the Foundry Dock Park is R1.
And why does the what was the recommendation that leaves that remaining? I think it's not the Downey property anymore. 29 to 35 Market.
Which one?
Like 29 to 35 Market is identified as B1. It's all residential there, those parcels along Market Street from the boat club down to Metro North on the west side of Market.
The west side of Market is all B1.
Right, and I'm just wondering why, since it's all residential in there.
Everything below the tracks was rezoned to B1 about 20 years ago.
Right, and so now we're taking the opportunity to update what's the logic in keeping it B1? I don't have a position. I'm just asking what the logic was to keep it rather than shifting it to R1.
because it then becomes each property then has to be evaluated individually. And I didn't have the time to do that.
Understood.
So for example, Hudson House, what does that become? Does that say B1? Yes, I think it does. What about the Hudson Expeditions? Does that stay B1? Yes, I think it does.
Mhm.
What about Dancing Dialogue? Does that say B1? I think it does.
I'm asking particularly about the west side of Market Street. Those are all east side of Market Street, and they are, yes, I would agree with you decidedly.
Sort of from Lund Terrace.
But
No.
looking at from Lund Terrace, yeah,
Chapel.
sort of from New Street and the boat club, those 4 beige parcels that abut or are between the boat club and Our Lady of Loretto are all residential.
Between the boat club and the chapel restoration, Marie.
Right. I'm sorry, to say Lady of Loretto, I meant the chapel. Sorry.
Okay. As I said, I didn't have the time to go through and evaluate each parcel. I did go back to the public hearing that was held when all of the properties below the railroad tracks were rezoned to B1. That public hearing, just from the comments that I read from the public hearing, which extended for 2 nights, and it was all comments, there was no way I was going to get involved in that.
Sure. Well, I mean, maybe that's a next phase, understanding that we're trying to wrap up at this point, but it doesn't.
No, the only thing that the code update committee was looking for was a change to I1 because it made no sense.
Right.
I1 today makes no sense
Right.
whatsoever.
Right. Of course.
Village had, if you look at the old zoning map, it identified parks. No, it identified
Recreation or something.
no, it identified recreation. Recreation, and it had no definition of what recreation consisted of.
Right.
So the intention was to firm up what recreation meant, to do away with I1 and I2, and there was the current map identifies railroad, but doesn't define it. Sorry, the current zoning map identifies railroad, but doesn't describe it. So that was done. And the current zoning map states a designated hotel historic recreational district. And then the zoning map further says, this is a district, but no portion of the village has this designation. So the intention was to get rid of that, get rid of I1 and I2. The current zoning map does not show B4A.
Right.
So, and there was this very curious B2, B1 designation in the middle of R1 and B2. So that was the intention.
Understood. So we managed, the code update managed many of the goals that you laid out. This is one of the areas that wasn't got to as part of that process, and perhaps at some point.
No, the intention was never to rezone below the track.
That's not what I'm saying. I meant the redesignation of the industrial districts, the I1 and I2, and you accomplished that goal.
Yes, we accomplished all.
You were not looking at this portion of Market Street and changing the B1. I understand.
Let me restate, that was never a goal.
Right. I'm agreeing with you. I'm understanding.
Okay. So we're good with the map and we're good with the list. 134 has to be cleaned up again based on stuff that got copied to places that didn't belong.
Right. Now the table dimensions, the table of dimensions.
And I have to, okay, let me get rid of this. Close this down.
Table of dimensions is 134- zoning table of dimensions.
Now this should correspond to what's in 134 zone by zone, if I'm correct.
That is correct, yes. And what I attempted to do here was to redline. And as you know, Google doesn't support redlining
Right.
in tables. So the red
And I
lines
know,
are,
I know
the red lines are,
Lost you.
sorry,
I reviewed this with you
Fran,
months
are you
ago,
talking?
Marie, and I, yes.
Yes.
Are you losing me?
Yes, we lost
Sorry
you.
about that. Am I there? No?
Yeah,
Yep.
you are.
Yes,
Okay, sorry. I know I reviewed this with you months ago, and remember that I clearly went one by one, but now I'm just gonna have to assume that what I'm looking at is what I reviewed months ago, because I haven't pulled out my latest copy of this. And the easiest way for me to review this again is actually to print it out.
okay, so what I'm hearing is that we're not ready to approve this yet.
Has anyone had a chance to take a look at the table?
We're talking about the dimensional requirements
The
table.
dimension, yeah, the table of dimensions, which we have to go back to chapter 134, zone by zone, and make sure that what it says here matches what we wrote in the code. So if
I
some,
did not, I looked at it, but I was afraid, I was concerned to touch any element of this in suggesting, because you two know this better than anyone, and I didn't want to muck up the work. So
Yes, you can't change it in suggesting.
Yeah.
I don't believe that Google Drive supports any modifications like that
in
to
the table,
a table.
I would
So,
ask.
I'm
Go ahead,
sorry.
Marie.
So what I would recommend, if you have any comments, just send them as emails and we'll deal with it.
got it.
Yeah, this just has to correspond, and I will go through this one more time.
Do you want another set of eyes on it, or do you two?
Yes, of course, of
Okay.
course.
Yes, no, yeah. Take another set of eyes on it, as many as you can.
You two tweets, the more
Yeah.
eyes, the better.
All right, I got you.
Right, so that's where we are for 134. We looked at,
Yes, 134. We have finished with it. We're not
new
finished
map.
with it, but we've
Right.
discussed it tonight.
Okay, so the new map is okay. The tax lot changes are okay.
Yeah, we're not going to publish the tax lot changes.
Okay.
I mean, they are not going to become part of 134.
No, that's a separate whole thing, right?
Yep.
Yeah, they don't
When you
become
say
part.
publish,
Okay.
you mean they're not going to be public, or what do you mean? Publish?
They have no place in chapter 134.
Oh,
I mean, they'll be, they will be public, obviously, but as we're doing the chapter, they're not, like everybody's house is not listed in chapter 134 with what zone you're in. So the
Okay.
fact that things are changed will be eventually done through some notification, I guess. You did it with the public
Yes.
hearing last time, right, Marie?
I would think that what we would do is send a letter to each of the owners of these properties and make them aware that we're proposing this change.
Okay. All right, so we have done 134, the dimensional tables, which I will do again, the tax lot, which I will close down. Next on the agenda, are we good to move on?
Yes.
Is 127, residential parking, which we have made some adjustments on. So whenever, is everyone on 127?
I'm sorry.
yes.
Okay,
Yes, Fran.
good. Okay, so 127, we now have some additions that have gone in here in the past month.
Yep.
The chapter is called 127 residential parking program. Marie, is this contingent on the parking committee's work, or can we approve as it sits now?
We can approve as it sits.
Okay, so now we have 2 residential parking. So the top 2 lines is really basically an index, right? 127.1 is residential parking program west of the Metro North Commuter Railroad which is the original residential parking program. Why am I not having an ability to change this?
Oh, Fran, let me see. Let me get out of here.
I can see it. I'm in suggested, but I can't correct it. I can't,
Yeah,
check
let me-
off the
let me
little
go.
X.
I got you. You're gone again. Let me add you.
All right, I'm gonna jump out and I'll jump back in.
Okay. I've just made the change.
Okay. Give me a second.
And I added you under your personal email.
Right, that's because it has to be a Gmail account, right?
Yep.
Okay, there we go. I'm good now. Okay,
Okay.
so west of the Metro North Commuter Railroad, and then we have one east of the Metro North Commuter Railroad.
Right.
So the first one is the one that has been in place for a number of
Yeah.
years.
And we need to change that, Fran. It should say residential parking program west of Metro North Commuter Railroad.
Commuter.
Got it. Great.
That and that. Okay, and this is what has been in effect right on. So we've just done some minor changes.
Yes.
Added a paren, deleted a paren, moved it to where it belonged.
Yep.
Okay, and then the new section starts down in page 2, 127 to residential parking program east of the Metro North Commuter Railroad. Okay, and all of this has been added. So,
Can I ask a
Just to be-
question?
sure.
I'm just curious that I noticed that the times were different, and I was just wondering why that was the case. Why the first district, the time is from 8 to 5, I believe it is, or
I believe it is 8 to 5,
yes.
yeah.
And then for the other district, it's 10 to 5. I'm
That
just
was
curious.
the 10 to 5 was recommended by the parking committee.
Huh.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if that's, that's
What I would love to understand a little bit more about what they base that on.
The problem west of the railroad is commuters.
Uh-huh.
The problem east of the railroad is people who are parking for the day to go shopping. Sorry. The parking west of the railroad. The problem is that people that live on the streets there can't find a place to park.
Oh, no. I
Weekends.
understand that because I live I live on one of those streets. I fully understand that. I'm just wondering the time, why 10 a.m. and not 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. or
to allow people to get out and not be penalized.
okay.
So if you have residential parking from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., at 5 p.m. anyone can park there.
Right.
And what you want is to give them the ability to get out and go to their job, which the parking committee felt 10 a.m. was a reasonable time to do that.
Right. Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
And I believe we have is it the parking that we have a public hearing next week?
A public meeting
next week. So we'll hear more comments about what people think or don't think about this.
Right.
The third, right?
Yes.
Yes.
June
We've got
3rd.
the 3rd, and then we've got the 8th.
7 o'clock.
So Marie, I'm sorry, this is sort of off track. A public meeting versus a public hearing.
Yes. If you remember when the parking committee gave their presentation to the village board,
Right.
no comments were permitted. No questions were permitted. So the intention of the public meeting is to give the public an opportunity to better understand how it will affect them.
And they can make comments?
Yes. It's open to Q&A. Yes.
Will there be information on the fee structure and what are there any ideas in terms of what the decal or what the permit actually looks like?
It will not be a decal. It'll be a rearview mirror hanger.
Okay.
So we need to get the proposals up and post something on Facebook that there's a public meeting coming up?
Yes, I believe that Jeff was going to do that on the village website today. He was going to attempt to get it into the Highland Current today for publication this week. And he was attempting to get, and the reason it's not there is my fault. I forgot all about the public notices. And he was going to try to get the PCNR to put it in their online edition today. Minimally, it'll be in the PCNR that is published online on Tuesday of next week.
Okay,
But yes,
once I see
Facebook-
Jeff's posting on the village website, I post it on Facebook, so.
Great.
I don't see it yet up, but I'm sure
Yeah.
he'll.
As soon as it pops up, I'll put it on Facebook, so I'm sure it'll be up in the morning, sometime tomorrow. Mhm. Okay, so 127-2 residential parking program east of the Metro North Commuter Railroad. The village, acting upon the authority granted to it by the legislature of the state of New York under Article 39, Section 1640H, Chapter 71 of the New York Vehicle and Traffic Law, signed into law by the governor on,
I can't find the date.
is
here.
this, is that for the V&T law?
No,
The
it's
date-
for,
the date was-
Enabling legislation.
it's the date when the governor signed the bill that was passed by the Senate and the Assembly.
This is,
This is for the
oh,
11th.
okay, I know
11th
which
Streets.
one, yes, the one that went on, that was right after we took office, I believe, right
Yes.
around the early part
It's
of our,
either-
okay,
2015 or 2016.
right,
It's
okay.
15, yeah.
Hereby adopts a residential parking permit system for the area east of the Metro North Railroad tracks within the limits of the village. Due to limitations on available parking on residential streets within the area between the Metro North Commuter Railroad and New York State Route 9D, do we need to paren Chestnut? No, I guess we don't. Morris Avenue, Chestnut Street, or no? Just leave it that way.
I think we can just, whatever you prefer.
Okay, I'm gonna leave it because it's both streets. The village has resolved to implement parking limits by establishing and enforcing a residential parking permit system on Stone Street, Railroad Avenue, Cross Street, Garden Street, Church Street, High Street, Haldane Street, Northern Avenue, Rock Street, Kemble Avenue between Main Street and the intersection with Wall, Rock, and Furnace Street. Such limits are intended to discourage parking by non-residents on those streets and designated areas during the designated hours. Vehicles registered under Section 404 of Chapter 71 of New York Vehicle and Traffic Law, which means vehicles registered to the severely handicapped, are exempt from this section.
You just said.
That means
the
they can
word-
basically,
Excuse me.
say it
I don't
again?
know. Just a question. The text is disabled and you read handicapped. Did you mean it to be the
I'm
text?
sorry, disabled, no.
Okay.
I don't know, why did I say handicapped?
I don't know.
I don't, it's not even there, it's not even anywhere near there. I apologize, but I don't know what I was reading. It must have changed on my screen automatically. Anyway, so they won't need a permit, is that correct? Or they will just be able to
That is
park?
correct. They'll be able to park there.
Okay.
Okay. And if you could approve the right paren and the deletion of the right paren in that.
Gotcha. Okay, so does that involve also temporary disabled parking tags as well as permanent ones? Doesn't,
I would have to go back to the V&T law to see.
okay.
Like if somebody
Because I
breaks
know
their
there's-
leg and they need, or breaks their hip and they need temporary.
Right, you can get a temporary one from Jeff or Ann, and Ann will be very strict on telling you what the rules are. And I think it's like 6 months or something, I forget what it is. Anyway, residential parking permit system is to be in effect between the hours of 10 a.m. and 5 o'clock p.m. daily, 7 days a week for those streets. Only those vehicles which display residential parking permit will be permitted to park in designated areas during the designated hours. Number of parking spaces available for non-residential parking permit holders shall be at least 20% of the total available parking spaces on those streets and shall be in designated areas. Fees for residential parking permits, when issued, are found in the master fee schedule. The village board of trustees will set the fee amount from time to time by adopting a resolution setting the fee in the master fee schedule. Any income generated through the fees will be credited to the general fund. Requirements for and proof of eligibility for residential parking permit shall be administered by the clerk of the village and may be updated from time to time as the village finds necessary. So long as such requirements and administration are consistent with this section and section 1648 of the chapter 71 of the New York V&T law of this state under which residential parking has been authorized. Residential parking permits shall be issued on a limited basis only for those legal residents of those streets who provide proof of their residency in a form acceptable to the village clerk and under the terms and conditions as set forth by the village clerk, made available at the village office upon request, which terms and conditions shall be uniformly applied and which may be modified as necessary by resolution of the board to affect the intent of this local law. Residential parking permits shall be valid for 1 year period from January 1 to December 31. Such permits shall be renewed annually. Temporary parking permits for tradespeople who are required to work at the property and residential parking area are available from the village clerk. Such temporary parking permits are available on a limited basis. Temporary parking permits for guests of residents in the residential parking area are available from the village clerk. Such temporary parking permits are available on a limited basis. This law takes effect upon filing. Marie, question on the temporary parking permits, is there going to be a fee for those, do you know, or are they not determined?
We don't think so for
Can I ask,
for the temporary.
Okay.
what does limited basis mean for these cases?
It means that if all of the parking permits that have been issued total significantly more than the number of parking spaces available, then the limit has run out.
I mean, so if I have my whole family, I can't get all parking permits for them, huh? All the 30 or so people that...
It depends, Fran. You could make a special request, and if possible, it could be accommodated.
So in when you, okay, so limited, does that also then mean it would be kind of like first come, first served then?
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Huh.
And
Okay.
it would be for a temporary period of time.
So if I have...
But it says limited basis also for the residential parking permits, like for folks who actually live here. So that's why I'm trying to figure out.
It's for guests and tradespeople.
That are on a limited basis.
Okay, but that language also in the residential parking, unless I'm looking at an older version.
Where are you reading?
Where are you reading that?
I was reading G. G. It says,
Oh, gotcha. Residential parking permits shall be issued on a limited basis only for those legal residents.
So let's say that someone comes along and says they have a 4-apartment building on street X. Sorry, a person couldn't do that. Let's say 4 people come into the village office and ask for 4 residential parking permits for all of them for the same property on that street.
Right.
That will probably not be honored. 1 building, 1 tax lot ID, 4 parking permits? No.
So on a limited basis here, basically, I guess the regulations haven't been totally like, so if you have a 2-family house,
Mhm.
and I know you haven't, like, we haven't set this in stone yet. If you have a 2-family house, can you get 2 permits? You're renting to one side.
So if you have a 2-family house and
Mhm.
it is identified as a 2-family house in the data that the village has available to it, and if you have a parking space on your lot, then what you would be issued is 1 residential parking permit because you have space available to park off the street.
Okay.
So the rule of thumb is everyone in the residential parking area gets 1 parking permit. If you do not have off-street parking, then each of those residences will get a second parking permit. Those that do not have off-street parking.
Got it.
So if I have a driveway and I'm a one-family house, I will still get a permit.
That is correct. You have to apply for it. You have to pay for it. You have
Right.
to provide proof of residency. But yes, you can get one.
Mhm.
So I assume that the parking committee has talked about the permits not being transferable. So there's going to be something, there has to be something identifying the plate number of the car
Mhm.
on the permit, so that if there is a violation, an officer can ticket.
Actually, no. What we're planning to do, so let's say you live on Garden Street and you have 3 cars. So you have 1 off-street parking space. You will be given 2 rearview mirror hangers. You can move them from vehicle A to vehicle B, depending upon what your needs are that day. So let's say you find a place to park in the non-residential parking area. You could park 1 car there and you could park 2 cars in the residential parking area. Sorry, you can park 1 car in your off-street parking space and 1 car on the street. If you have no parking spaces and you have 3 vehicles, you qualify for 2 residential parking hangars. You can switch those from car A to car B to car C as your need exists. Or you can, if you have a tradesperson coming to your house that day and you are worried that there will not be a parking space for them, you can give them your residential parking permit for the day.
So a question for the committee to look at, when we did the trial run of parking at Mayor's Park, there was someone who passed their, so Dave made placards that went on the dashboard, and there was someone who passed their card on to someone else, and we saw the transfer happen. And the officer who was on duty said that he could not ticket because there was not anything that identified the permit to the vehicle itself. So the as he explained it, there was no evidence that a transfer had occurred. I guess in this situation, it sounds like it doesn't matter so long as that placard isn't being passed on to, well, how would you know that the placard's not being passed on to people who aren't residents? If it doesn't identify vehicles.
At this point, does it matter? You paid for this placard. If I have my grandchildren coming up to visit and I put my car in the lot, in my driveway, I can give them my permit to park in front of my house.
So let's follow the logic of that to another code we're looking at with short-term rentals. How if the permits are transferable, I don't know if it matters if a host is going out of town and passing on or providing their second residential permit to a guest. Is that a problem?
Well, the residential permits are assigned based upon the tax lot ID. They're based upon a particular residence. This is associated with the ownership of a house.
Right.
And
so if I have a room in my house that I rent out, can I pass my permit on to a short-term rental guest?
No,
Does it matter?
I'm sorry. You can do that if you wish.
Okay, and that's cool.
Yeah.
Wait,
Sure.
say, Fran?
As long as you put your car someplace off the street, or whatever.
But if,
or you can't put your car on the street without a permit.
Right. So I guess the check there is if the host is using, if a household has 2 and the host is using 1 and a guest is using the other, the net is the same, right? It's 2 vehicles assigned to that house. They would just have to find somewhere else to put the second vehicle.
Yep.
Of the owner.
Yep.
Okay.
Right. Okay. All right. I'm going to
So then you can ignore the comment I made at the bottom.
Gotcha. Okay. Everything else looks good here, Marie. I think it looks fine. All we have to do is wait and see after the public meeting if there's any other adjustments we need to make.
Yes,
Other than
yes.
that, I'm good with 127 as it stands. Is that good with everybody else at this point?
Yep. Yes.
Tweets?
Tweets?
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, so 127, okay. I will move that over, Marie.
okay,
I'll move it to cleaned and okay and shut it down. And then we'll just
Great.
hold,
great.
and then we'll just hold for any public comments or any adjustments. Okay. Tweets, just so you figure, once we've finished with a chapter, we move it out of, or we copy it and move it to an area called cleaned and okayed. We shut down any more edits that anyone can do in it so that people don't go back in and make other edits after we think we're all finished with it.
Okay.
And then we just push it on. Eventually, Jeff or somebody in the office is going to make them formally look nice so that we can do the public hearing on all these chapters. So once with that, you'll still see it in this area, but you won't be able to make any more edits on it.
Understood.
Okay, the last one is 64. Are we getting into 64 or are we burnt out?
No, we've got time.
We're going into it. Okay, chapter 64. And I don't think there's a lot left in this to do. We've
No.
done this and redone it.
Just to make sure so that I make sure that I'm in the right one, there is chapter 64 and then there's copy of chapter 64, which you'd be looking
Did I
at.
screw that up? Let me see. Where are you?
I'm just in the, which folder am I in? I just did a search at the top.
Did you
put
get a
it
post phase
before.
5?
I think I'm in post phase 5. Hang
You're
on.
probably in cleaned and okayed if you have a copy.
There's only,
You can't be in, yeah, you can't be in there. You've got to go back to just post phase 5.
Okay, hang on.
And
I want to
chapter
make sure I'm looking at the one you're
64.
looking at. Post phase 5.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And
And
now,
64 historic district. Maria, it says historic district chapter 57. I don't know why it says that.
yeah, I don't know what, oh, I know, Fran, because it was missing the, this is a professional consulting fees. It was missing that. And
Oh,
so
okay.
I,
All right,
yeah,
so
and
that's
so this
just
one,
a
this one
side
contains
note.
that. Yeah,
Okay. Okay, so this is me. Okay, Kathleen, you with me?
I am. Yep.
Okay. Okay, we're on the one that just says historic district chapter 57, and I'll fix that name. Comments. I know we've been through this. It has been, if there's a copy created, we've pretty much approved this, and just to see if there are any last minute changes to it.
I have something that I think we need to do, well, two things. This chapter refers to a map as part of the chapter. There is no map as part of this chapter. I provided the HDRB with the name of the woman in Carmel who has been doing my maps, and they are working with her to get a map. So at some point, a map will be included in this chapter. It is not now. The primary reason I asked that we review this is the comments that John made relative to natural resources.
So what?
I don't see any comments in this one, Marie. Did you make that?
No. This was in discussions that we have had with John
Right.
in executive session, and he
Right.
has remarked
Okay.
more than once about we need to revisit that.
Okay. Where would we be looking, Marie? I'm sorry, I'm a little.
What page?
So if I look at definitions, page 8,
9.
natural
8.
resources,
Okay.
it's number 24, natural resource, a unique geological or geographical feature that contributes to the character of an individual landmark or the historic district, including but not limited to rock outcropping, shorelines, and stream beds. I think that what we need is a more specific identification of the specific natural resources that are being referred to here.
So I think that what John recommended was that this should refer to a survey in which those particular items are identified. Yeah.
would they be shown on the map that the HDRB is creating, Marie?
I
Or
have no
no?
idea what
They
the
haven't
map is gonna look like.
haven't been identified yet. Would need to be identified in the survey.
So, so in the absence of a survey, then I don't think we should have natural resources in here.
Have you talked to the HDRB about that?
No, no. Who's Anonymous Jackal?
I don't know.
Their cursor is
someone
at
in-
natural.
There's someone in your document.
Oh,
How did someone get into our document?
who else would be in here?
I don't know.
I see,
Cut it out.
I see Anonymous
I see it too, Marie.
CAPYBARA, and I see Anonymous Jackal.
I see it too.
You want to shut it down?
Yeah,
Okay, shut down 64.
I'm going to close out I'm going to close out Google completely and come back.
Yeah. All right.
sorry, Anonymous CAPYBARA is back. I do not
Really?
understand how someone got this link.
Do we see, there's not someone signed into the call with that name. How are they in the document?
Beats the S out of me, but they're there.
Well, I don't think we should go on if we don't know what's,
Marie, can you tell who has access to it if you go on and click on the front?
The thing is that one can, if someone sent the link, then anybody can access it.
You mean the person who got the link, not anybody, it doesn't become an open document, right?
well, can you show, do you see history of it having been shared? You
No,
should be
I
able to
have not.
see- Yeah, I don't either.
There's an anonymous goose. Is that somebody?
Nope. Well, I recommend that I don't know what to recommend.
So we've also got Anonymous Laura, who's coming in and out.
Okay, I can't even get back into it. It keeps popping out.
I can't-
There's an anonymous leopard now too.
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
Marie, can you shut everybody's access down to this?
I don't know how to do that, Fran. I'd have to
I
look
know-
into it.
I know when you go on the front where you have that little person, the head with the plus
Yeah.
sign, but I
Yeah,
don't
I looked.
see anybody.
Yeah.
I don't see anybody listed there anymore.
So I have me, Dave, Tweeps, Kathleen. Oh, Fran, you're not there.
I know, and I'm getting some weird stuff going on here.
Okay, so I've just added you. Somehow I think you got deleted from everything.
I was working fine, so obviously I was in for a while. I don't know if somebody's computer is getting,
I can't get back into 64 at all now.
You're still identified as a viewer.
Okay, so hang on. Okay, now I'm back in.
Okay,
it's-
I currently
see
don't. Are you in now, Fran?
I'm in.
Okay, and I don't see anybody else in yet.
Up
I
at the
see
top,
anonymous
there's a anonymous
capybara.
capybara.
Who is that?
Sorry, they all came back. They all came, but the whoever Capybara is back in.
Well, I see it too. What do you want to do?
Well, let's, sorry, we were having a discussion, which we can have not even being in, although if they have access to the document,
Can you, as the owner of the
They can
document,
mess.
control who makes edits? I mean, you can, right?
yes, and no one has authorization to make
Okay, so-
edits other than us.
Okay, so that should hold. That should hold whoever anonymous capybara is from making changes, right? Whose
You're gonna
cursor?
Anonymous.
I'm on the first page and I see a pink cursor. I'm on the opening page of the chapter. I see a pink cursor and a blue cursor, like two people are in the document.
I see the pink, I believe, is
So I
Marie.
see,
And I see a green cursor that's anonymous raccoon right up at the title.
yep. I don't know who these are. Okay, so let's do the following. The question was natural resource. And Kathleen, you say there's a survey.
No, I said there should be. I recalled that John, among his recommendations was if you have reference to natural resources, there should be a survey that identifies exactly what those resources are, rather than being broad in the way it is. And I
Okay.
think that's right.
Okay,
That does not currently exist, so it would have to be done.
or in the meantime, we remove this.
Yeah, you could do that.
Okay, I will communicate with Al about that.
I mean, that seems like the simplest thing until that issue is resolved.
Okay,
I have downloaded this document
Okay, good.
into a Word document in case we lose it. I have it on my screen. Marie,
that
where
your-
will,
Sorry, Fran.
we'll be on page 8, right? I'm just gonna put a note.
yes.
Okay.
You're typing, right, Fran?
I'm
I am,
not,
that was me that just,
I hear
Well, I
someone type. I hear you typing, but I don't see the cursor moving.
I just typed a note next to natural resources. And it has my name on it. It says, delete this definition. Marie will speak with
Oh,
Al.
there
Can
it
you
is.
see
Yep, I see it. Yep. I was nervous because I wasn't seeing the cursor move, but I was on the wrong page. You're good.
I don't know who's in. I see Eliza in, and I also see a Chamber of Commerce
Not the
person in.
document. I see. Oh, in the meeting. No, these folks are showing up in Google, not in.
Right,
My
that's okay, yeah.
recommendation is that we shut down and stop until we figure out what's going on. I'm nervous to have the document open.
I don't know if they'll make any.
I don't think
Any
that
other
makes any
comments?
difference since for this particular document, the only people who have edit access are Fran and myself.
And I
People can-
just
People
I downloaded it, so I have an actual hard
Well,
copy of it.
what's interesting, what's interesting is that on my screen, I don't know what you see. I see Fran. I no longer see Marie or Tweeps or me, but I just see this anonymous capybara and anonymous raccoon. I don't see the others. I don't see the others who have access, meaning Dave, Marie.
I see Kathleen, and I don't see anybody else except the two anonymous people.
So I'm wondering if, okay, there's Marie popping back. I'm wondering if it's, I don't know. I'm not a technology person. I don't know what's
Yeah.
happening. I'm just concerned. Now I see Fran and Marie, but I don't see the rest of us.
Creeps. All right. I've got a hard
Okay.
copy of this. So are there any other comments we need to put in this, Marie, before we shut down?
No, sorry, Fran. If you search for the word maps, if you do a find on map,
Yep.
we need a map from the HDRB.
There are 11 places where it says maps, starting on the definitions. So we need to, I have a note that we need to get the map from the HDRB.
Yeah.
Okay, so other than that, there are 11 places. Do they need to all be noted, or can I just put a note at the top?
So it's only in the first and second instance of the reference to the map, which says the shall consist of the area designated on the map made a part of this chapter. That's in 64-2, 40. And then 64-3 says shall consist of the area designated on the map attached to and made a part of this chapter. I'm sorry, if you look at 64-3, Fran,
Uh-huh.
it says attached to and made a part of this chapter 1. That doesn't make sense.
Where do you see
Okay.
this?
No, that always
64
does that. It's referring to a note, but it does it incorrectly for
It's-
whatever reason.
It's
I'll
the
get rid of
it's
that.
the footnote. Okay,
Yeah.
yep.
I think the
Okay,
intention,
that's that.
as I recall, Marie, when this chapter was being updated, I think the intention is recorded there in the editor's note that it not be made part of the actual chapter, so that if there were changes,
And preferred to is on file in the
would
office
be
of the
made,
village
that it would
clerk.
be that the map, the original map itself, would be kept on file in the village clerk's office, unless the board has since changed its thinking on whether it should be included in the chapter or not, or whether it should be in. Go ahead.
It's absolutely fine to refer to the map being on file in the village clerk's office, but then don't say that it's part of this chapter.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would just say check in to determine. That is my recollection of why that note was made, was having it be separate and on file in the village clerk's office, so that if there were changes in the map, there would be more flexibility for the ordinance, right? It
Okay.
wouldn't have to evolve.
Okay.
I'm sorry for the
Okay, so my,
So if you
So-
read 64-3,
no, I see what you mean. I see what you mean. So I'm saying I would ask the board, do they still intend for it to be filed with the village clerk? And if so, we should change the text.
I have sent that email to Al 6 months ago.
Okay, so maybe we need to ask Sean.
No, Al said he was working on getting that.
Yeah, I think Al was working
Okay.
on getting the map, he was working with, I'm sorry that I can't remember that, Beatty and Watson. But I think
No,
subsequently you sent them to the county, which is a better option. My point is, before we modify this, should we check to see that the intention,
right, well, that's what the, that's the.
which of these two, either in the chapter or in the clerk's
And
office,
that's the note I put, either waiting for a map or
or
reword.
reword? So we're good.
Yeah, so that works. Okay, other than that, I think, was there anything else in this chapter, Marie?
no, that was it. Those 2 items, the maps and natural resources.
Okay, so that takes care of chapter 64.
And
And
so,
both of them are waiting for information on, right?
right, we need to go back on 134 for the rewording of that section. And then I think we're done.
Okay, so 134 has to be cleaned up. Done? As in really done? And you think we have public hearings, wait till those start coming up. 134 has to be cleaned up and looked at again.
Yes.
127 we're done with, and 64 we're waiting for confirmation from the HDRB.
Yep.
Looks like a plan to me, ladies and gentlemen. Can we call this
Great.
meeting tonight?
So I make a motion that we adjourn.
I will second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Meeting adjourned.
Good night.
Thank you,
Good
everyone.
night, all. Have a wonderful holiday weekend.
Oh, you too.
Yes.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Take
Bye.
care. See you all soon.